Ingeniously Smart City, brought to you by NovoTrax and RST Technology. Ingeniously smart technology for your city.
In today's world, many cities, counties, states, and businesses are announcing that there are going to be horrific budget cuts. These cuts will affect every walk of life. Schools, services such as police departments, fire departments, ambulances, and every other business is expected to do more with less. Many counties and cities and other businesses are required to consolidate services. Why? Because time is money, and there just isn't enough to go around. But if each of these agencies could cut out the wasted time, which equates to millions of dollars, and eliminate duplicated work and efforts, not only would frustration be minimized, but communication would be much clearer with far less confusion. For any government agency or business to compete in the future and do more with less, we have to stop wasting time and duplicating efforts. Well, that's hard to do in a world where there are so many different departments and so many agencies. How can they all possibly talk together? Studies show that we can improve efficiency by 30% just by cutting out waste and by cutting out duplicated efforts by increasing communication. In the past, that would have been impossible, but today we have the solution to help every agency effectively communicate with every other department and agency within the enterprise, city, or state. It's called Distributive Process Control.
To start with, I want to get everybody on the same page, and to do that, I want to go through this little PowerPoint. The idea of the smart city, I think, is depicted very well in this picture. It shows the entire city networking together. So who is that? Well, in one case, it is the school system. In another case, it's the hospital. In another case, it's the HR department for the county or for the city. In another case, it might be the fire department, police department. It might be the maintenance department, the roads and utilities and all that sort of thing. So the idea is to bring everybody in and give them the information that they need. They're not going to get any information that they don't have authorization to get, but they are going to get all of the information they need. And that is a very powerful concept. There's a lot of people out there that talk smart city, and they do some pretty smart things. The NovoTrax concept of smart city is to bring all of the players together and break down the silos. And we have to do that using two methodologies. One is called distributive control and one is called process control. And I'd like us to understand both of those. So distributive control is where you have a master brain that is monitoring everything else. So you see with our various products that you'll see today, they can stand on their own. If you just wanted CRM, it can stand on its own. But isn't it much more powerful when CRM talks to document management, and when document management talks to the ERP, and when the maintenance department talks to the finance department? That is distributive control. And to do that, you have to have a system that connects everybody together. And that is, in a nutshell, what NovoTrax is all about. Getting people the information they need and breaking down the silos. The cost that is the highest for every enterprise that I've ever run into that they can trim off is wasted time and duplicated efforts. And that goes away with a distributive system. But it's not enough to just have a distributive system. You can't just know what's going on. You have to take action. So if you take action based upon the things that are really going on, not what you think is going on, then it becomes very, very powerful. And so that's what we call process control, and I'll explain that. Distributive process control basically comes down to this. You have inputs, and then you have the master brain, and then you have outputs. And then the outputs trigger other inputs. So essentially, all of your inputs become all of your outputs, and all of your outputs become all of your inputs. We'll look through some real life examples of that in a few minutes, but understand this principle is it's not just enough to know what's going on. We have to trigger an action somewhere else, and that's what NovoTrax does. So what are these inputs? What are these outputs? Well, they could be sight, sound, they could be a mechanical action, a pneumatic action, electrical action, they could be smell, they could be speech, they could be temperature, they could be location. All of these things feed into the processor. And then the processor analyzes that and says, okay, well, based upon these inputs, I need to do this action. Based upon this action, I better give this information to someone else. That is distributive process control, and that's what NovoTrax does. We enhance that with as many types of inputs that we can get. RFID is a big one. We'll be talking about that in a few moments. So here's just a very small simulation of how this could work. We have the police as an input. We have the fire department as an input. We have the EMS and the utilities all as an input. And they in turn cause all of these various outputs, and those various outputs then trigger an input. And it's all monitored by that distributive control module in the middle, and that is the heart of NovoTrax. It's based upon this feedback loop, it's based upon inputs, it's outputs. So what is an input? Let's take a look at some. So we're going to look at what the Bosch Smart Camera can do with the NovoTrax software. This is an example of how we would monitor the parking lot. So we know who's coming in. We can grab their license plate right there. We know that that's a bike, keeping track of the bike. We keep track of the driver. He gets out of his car, and we know that that driver is associated to that car. We can keep track of him, but who's this guy? This guy's not supposed to be associated to that car. Now we can trigger an action. Do we want to call the police, or do we just want to call the security, the building security to come down? Well, that all depends on the severity of what we're doing. But the smart camera, tied in with an action, can do this. Very, very, very powerful technology. I'm hoping that you can see all of the inputs become outputs, and all of the outputs become inputs. We'll make it a little bit more real for your environment here in a few moments. But let's understand a little bit more of this particular technology. We can grab the license plate, even though it's dark. It's pitch dark, but it have perfect color. We can track that vehicle. We can separate the vehicle from the guy. We can see the guy climbing over the fence. Even it's dark, it looks like it's in broad daylight. And it can go, it's very fast. It can monitor, so here we've got a zone that's lined out. Boom, some kids come along and decide to steal a box just for the fun of it. Got their license plate number. Well, with a smart city environment, we dispatch the police, and we know the longitude, the latitude, and the altitude, and the exact time, and we know who we're looking for, and we know who that vehicle is registered to. Here we could monitor a school. We're counting the people coming in and out. We can even add facial recognition as another input. It's an input, it's an output. But what can we do with that input? We're counting the people as they're coming in. We're tracking them. We know where they're at. But now let's know who they are. So here we're checking this young lady, and we're using the camera. But we can take that information and combine it into a smart city environment. And now we can run a check on any of those people. And the camera's smart enough that it can pick up infinite amount of people, and it will recognize their faces But it's not enough to just recognize the face. We have to do something. Well, in this case, we run a check. And we find out that this young lady is the same young lady that's been missing for 4 years. And what do we do about that? Well, we take immediate action. We either call security, we call the police. We can unlock doors, we can lock doors, we can monitor who's coming in. We see exactly where everything's at in the building. We know if the door's open or closed, and we control complete access of the building based upon roles and permissions. And we have an accurate history of who has been where and when for how long. With distributive process control, you control the temperature. You monitor the HVAC. You know the turbidity. You know air quality. You know the humidity. And changes are easily made and documented. We also can track assets and inventory. We know where all assets and inventory are in real time. We even know where the assets are moving down the highway. We know where the vehicles are, and we know what assets are on those vehicles. In the case of a school bus, we know what children are on the bus, and the parents know. Police, fire, and rescue can now dispatch the right vehicle that has the appropriate assets on board. Cities, counties, and states and 911 centers often dispatch duplicate resources, trying to make sure they have all of the bases covered because they don't know exactly what resources they really have. In a distributive process control in a smart city environment, duplication of resources goes away. That can save millions of dollars, but more importantly, it can save a life. We process money in real time. There's no longer a need to wait for 3 days for the credit card to clear. There's no chargebacks. Instant payment to merchants. Document management becomes easy. And there's an accurate history of where every document is, who has read that document, how long they read that document, did they print that document, a clear chain of custody for all documents. That is just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with NovoTrax and distributive process control for your smart city.